Hi, I'm Mike.
And I'm Maggie, and this is the M&M Debrief, the podcast where Mike and Maggie discuss the top stories in politics and sports and try to make sense of the headlines. Mike, do we have any follow-ups from the last episode?
Yes, we do. Let's see. The hantavirus, which I mentioned a few episodes ago, has now been seen in 16 states, 41 people. Kind of minuscule, but it's here.
16 states.
So, and it's being monitored. I don't know how many of these 41 people were actually on that boat, maybe, but so how it got here, not quite sure. Probably from the boat, but it's here. Whether it ends up being like coronavirus or not, we'll see. But it's here. And then I mentioned that Iran was starting to expand its area around the Strait of Hormuz and taking that area and having it be more of a actual authority. They've given it a name, the Persian Gulf Strait Authority, and they are actually going into business, I guess, with Oman, which is on the other side of the Strait of Hormuz. I guess the alternative would be to invade and just take it over, but they thought, oh, we'll just go into business with Oman. And so it's called the Persian Gulf Strait Authority, and they'll be controlling traffic and collecting tolls and that sort of thing. So we'll see how it goes with the ceasefire and any peace agreement that comes up. But it has an official name, and it's an official thing. So
PGS.
PGSA, for those of you that want to Google it, Persian Gulf Strait Authority. And the last thing is I mentioned a potential conspiracy theory last week about a guy, Vice Admiral Robert Harward, who was on Fox News, and it sure looked like to the world that he was wearing one of those rubber masks that actually are very good, and they make you look like a completely different person. Because of this something at the base of his throat by his chest. It sure looked like it was a mask that was coming loose. And it turns out it was just bad lighting. I was getting all geared up for a conspiracy theory along the lines of JFK or 9/11, but turns out it was just bad lighting there on the Fox News set. So I was kind of bummed out about that. But
Well, they clearly need to improve their production quality, right?
yeah, they don't. Yeah, they don't. Apparently, they're going on a small budget over there. They don't
Mm.
need. Haha, sarcasm. Okay, so anyway, so getting to the war, so there was a bunch of negotiations over the Memorial Day weekend. Trump was saying we're close, we're 95% there, yada yada. The running joke was that the last 5% was the uranium in the Strait of Hormuz. It's like, really, that's only 5%. I think it would be the opposite. It was like 5% was probably settled, and the other 95% was the Strait of Hormuz and the uranium.
Right.
So it seemed to be actual real, meaning there was some substantial progress, and it looked like it could potentially have been close, and I could tell that by who got angry about it. So all the neocon GOP hawks like Lindsey Graham and Ted Cruz, the Israelis, Benjamin Netanyahu, and all his his foreign minister and all that, they were up in arms over this. So that told me that something was kind of real going on. And whatever is going to happen is going to be bad for America. Whatever gets signed ain't going to be anywhere near a victory, and it's going to look like a surrender. And
I think
so,
I think a lot of people thought that the Obama administration, the joint agreement, was not ideal, but it was okay. But I
mhm.
think what we're hearing is that it's gonna be worse than the Obama deal. Is that right?
I would bet my life savings that it'll be worse than the Obama deal. So the one unifying factor on MAGA is that anything done by a Democrat is bad, which I find, well, silly to say the least. But yeah, whatever is going to happen is going to end up being worse. The Iranians are going to control the Strait of Hormuz. They're not going to give up any of their enriched uranium. They're not going to have a regime change. They might have killed a bunch of people, but guess what? There's a lot of other people who are ready to step up. Oh, I do have a sidebar on that, by the way. And they're even more hardcore than the original Khomeini, who is actually, I think, the second Khomeini. He's the original Khomeini from 1979. The U.S. on Sunday, or maybe it was Monday, did actually attack southern Lebanon, some of the ballistic missile sites, maybe. And then Netanyahu ended up talking to Trump and about it, and lo and behold, after he did that, Donald Trump did did a complete 180 on some of these things. They were going to have a ceasefire in Lebanon. There is now no ceasefire required in Lebanon. They want everybody to join the Abraham Accords, which is very beneficial to Israel. And now he wants to get all the uranium out in the first phase. There was going to be a couple of phases to this thing, and which is all things that Israel wants. And so now Donald Trump is spewing that after a phone call from Benjamin Netanyahu. So go figure. So we'll see what happens now. So, of course, we had another spike in the stock market yesterday. So, Trump is just basically day trading on the war. So we'll see. Israel's still going into Lebanon. They've got bulldozers and they're setting up some camps in Syria, which everybody thinks is kind of a way they're going to go around
Right.
the frontline battle that they've gotten from northern Israel into southern Lebanon. They're going to try to go around that through Syria.
I'm sure the Syrians are going to object to that.
Well, the Syrians have been bought. The Israelis were part of dismantling Syria. So it was great to get what was his
Oh,
name, Assad. It was great to get Assad out of there. But the guy who's in charge now is just basically a puppet, and he'll just give oil and anything to the Israelis and the Americans. The Syrians are just another puppet. So.
that's how you take over the world.
It's working. I know it's kinda working, well, at least for the Middle East, and they're completely, I wouldn't say completely, but they have a heavy influence on America, so the Israeli plan is kinda working. So we'll see. Yeah, the sidebar was that, the current Khamenei who's in charge, when they did the first day of bombing, it was thought that his wife and his daughter, in addition to his father, were killed.
Right.
Apparently the wife survived.
Wow.
I picked that up. So, I mean, he's still father and daughter are killed, but the guy's wife lived, apparently. The Iranian hackers now are stepping up their psyops capabilities. They're going on to WhatsApp. They're doxing the soldiers. Doxing, for those of you that don't know what that is, it's when you basically publish someone's address, contact information, their family information. You dox them.
Right.
They're contacting soldiers directly, saying, "We're coming
Really?
for you. We know who you are."
We
Ishtak
know
or
who
whatever
your
your name
kids
is.
are.
We
Yeah.
know where you live. We know who you are. They're going after Mossad. They're hacking into various databases. The Israelis do the same thing. And Iranians are upping their skills with social media, getting into critical infrastructure, probably in America and Israel. So we'll see how that ends up playing out. Oman, I mentioned the PGSA a few minutes ago.
Mhm.
Yeah, Iran is officially, I guess, in business with Oman, and they've
Nice.
got contracts and plans and all that stuff, and they're part of the PGSA. Let's
Now it
see.
becomes just the cost of doing business, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're looking around. Every one of these countries is kind of looking around. It's kind of interesting to see how the members of the GCC, which is the Gulf Coast Council, I believe.
Mhm.
It's kind of interesting to see what deals they're making and how they're approaching it. Saudi Arabia proposed a non-aggression pact with Iran, even though Iran bombed them. Oman is now going, well, okay, we're probably better off going with Iran on this.
Well, why
United
should
Arab
Iran have all the fun, right?
Right, yeah. So United Arab Emirates is now going with Israel. They're going the other way. They're getting stuff from Israel. So yeah, is it Yemen? Yemen's got the Houthis. They're with the Iranians. On the other side, on the other side of the Persian Gulf, which is out of the Red Sea. So it's just kind of interesting to see how these are starting to play out. These
Call me crazy, but I feel like we're going back in time to tribal warfare, right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the boundaries, and I should do a little research myself on this. A lot of these boundaries and these countries were set up by the British back 100 years ago after World War One. Like Palestine was actually the British authority of Palestine.
Right.
The British actually set that up, and they gave heavy favoritism to Jewish communities there. So it was a pretty easy transition for the Jewish people to go after World War II and just say, "Oh, you Palestinians, "Get the hell out of here. We're in charge now." It was the heavy favoritism that they got from the
Uh-huh.
British when they originally set up Palestine. And I believe a lot of the countries that got drawn with Saudi Arabia, UAE, Oman, they got drawn by the British too, I believe. Let me do some research on that. But I think it was all
Mhm.
kind of artificially set up with the Bedouins and with the tribes that were there when the oil got discovered back in the day.
Right.
So it wouldn't surprise me a bit if all that started to shuffle out and get reorganized, I guess. So yeah, well, that's kind of interesting to me how those relationships are playing out. So
Right. Right.
let's see. Asia is in trouble with fuel already. The Philippines is in a state of emergency. Pakistan, China, India, I got long queues and shortages of fuel already. We're okay. I don't know about you out there, but my day-to-day life here in the Chicago area has been fine. I still get gas. The prices are starting to bump up a little bit, but there's long queues and lines for fuel already in a lot of these Asian countries. So they ain't happy, and they ain't happy. I'm pretty sure they're not mad at Iran. Well, maybe they are, but they should be
They're
mad at us.
probably mad at Trump, right?
It should be. They should be. This is one thing. I mean, they should be, but I know I am. Yeah, yeah, but I don't quite know the internals of some of these countries. Like India's got 1.5 billion people. I don't know what they think of Iran
Well,
versus what they think
India's
of
pretty
America.
unhappy with Trump.
They got to be. So anyway, these countries are already seeing some shit that we're probably going to see I don't know, in the next 6 weeks probably.
Well, if I may, maybe Trump knows that. And it's one thing to talk about high gas prices, but if you literally have lines like during the old OPEC oil crisis.
Well, yeah, that's a whole nother deal. Yeah, we are a net exporter. America is now, I think, the top export. If we're not the top exporter, we're in second place, and that's from shale oil. They call it the shale revolution. But that oil is not owned by America. Remember, we're a capitalist society, so it's owned by whatever company got it out, and they can sell to whoever they want. So if they can get
Exxon.
$140 a barrel on the open market, why in the hell would
Mhm.
they sell it to America at $80 a barrel? And but Americans are going, wait a minute. That's our oil. It's in our country,
We
and you're
might.
selling it. Yeah. So hey, welcome to capitalism. I hope you enjoyed the ride here. So the answer is yes. The actual physical possession of the oil, we should be fine. But capitalism. Hey, so we'll see what happens there. Are we actually gonna have shortages and lines at the gas station? For those of you that weren't alive in 1974, hey, that was fun.
Yeah, really.
But so anyway, they're already seeing some nasty stuff in Asia all over the
Right.
place, and we'll see if it ends up coming here.
Thank you, Trump.
Yeah, and another thing I wanted to point out is that a shipment of missiles that we were supposed to send to Japan, the same THAAD missiles that we're using, and that got delayed, mainly because we're shooting all of our inventory in the war, and yeah, we need it for ourselves. And the same thing with Taiwan. I think we just talked about Taiwan and China from last week. But yeah, these shipments of American missiles to these Asian countries that we have business deals with, are getting delayed. I wouldn't say canceled, but delayed.
Not getting anything right?
Yeah, Taiwan is key. I'm not. Taiwan is going to go to China. At some point, maybe next week, maybe 3 years from now. I don't know, but we're just not going to defend Taiwan, even though they have 80.
At
What is
least
it?
under Trump.
Yeah, 85% of the semiconductors. China has a stranglehold on rare earth metals, and for some reason, we're not going to defend them. So I think Trump's hoping that he can delay stuff and get the semiconductor factories built in America, which is at least a 5-year project. These are very precise factories that have to be made. But anyway, we're not able to deliver our stuff. I don't know if they've actually paid for them yet, but it's because we're shooting them all at Iran. So
Right.
that can't be good. So,
Is there anything good that we can say is coming out of this whole Iran war? Is there a single positive thing?
well, I'm a big fan at this point in my life of the truth. I am starting to be obsessed with what is the truth. I mean, I live most of my life in a nice American fantasy. My life's been comfortable. I got a lovely wife. I have some lovely children. My life is generally comfortable, except around tax season. But now the
Time for
truth
all
about
this.
who's in charge, what's really running the show, and some things that I had in the back of my mind, like it's really not about red versus blue, it's about rich versus poor, that sort of thing. That's really coming to light.
Mm,
I think that's good news. It's very upsetting news, but it's good. At least we can see the world how it really is. And I don't know. I'm a fan of the law of unintended consequences. So I think things are gonna go in the shitter, but you never know.
mm,
So maybe it'll be okay. The law of unintended consequences. You can't quite tell. But
mhm.
maybe it'll be okay if we don't have 85% of the semiconductors coming out of some podunk island in the South China Sea. Maybe it's better off that we spread around the semiconductors to our country and other states in our country and stuff. Maybe that'll be a good thing, right? We don't have to
Yeah.
worry about Taiwan. Maybe Japan will start to make its own missiles. They're completely capable of making their own defense. They're a pretty good navy. They were a pretty good navy back in the day. Maybe they'll
Yeah.
decide, we're gonna defend our own self, and we're gonna compete with China, and we won't have to worry about giving them stuff, and that's better off. Maybe Europe will start to make their own military and defend their own homeland, and we won't have to worry about it. I thought it was a good thing that we were part of Europe. Maybe it's better that Europe take care of itself. So things that we think are bad maybe end up being good. So.
Right.
All right. Anyway, enough war, honey. What do you got on a domestic line here?
Shooter at the White House.
Yeah, this one's simple. The guy was just crazy. He was stopped by the Secret Service numerous times about how to get into the White House. Apparently, God told him he needed to get into the White House. I would have thought God had better things to think about, but
Well,
apparently.
right.
Anyway, this guy has some mental illness problems.
Oh, okay.
Secret Service took him out.
Well, if he's has mental health issues, sorry that
Yeah,
actually
yeah,
I don't think he should have been shot.
yeah. I'm
If
trying
he
to,
had
trying to.
mental health issues, he needed mental health care. Call me crazy. He's sick, so
Yeah, we can thank Ronald Reagan for that, who basically put an end to all the psychiatric
care.
hospitals that we had. And if you're when you walk down the street and you see three or four guys sitting there asking for money, being weird, hey, well, you know what? They used to be in a mental institution and they have a nice place to live, and they could be crazy there instead of on the street.
Mhm.
But thanks, Ronald Reagan, for breaking all that up back in the day. So. Anyway, yeah, so I don't know. One thing I wanted to bring this up because I've been trying to figure out if Trump has got more threats against his life than, let's say, Biden or Obama. I don't even know how
Maybe
many.
maybe we're just hearing about them more. I bet
I mean,
half the time, a lot of these presidents just didn't mention it, you know?
Another thing is that Trump has just been decimating the federal government at all levels. So the Secret Service is not immune from that. So maybe there's just less people in the Secret Service that can do research and go look at and talk to these guys before they go nuts. And maybe all the good people who are real solid Secret Service agents, they left, and you're left with the below average Secret Service agents.
Well,
So.
on top of that, just the FBI is being run
Yeah,
by
the
idiots,
FBI is getting run by a
and
knucklehead, and they
they're
and they cut
firing
everything.
or forcing into resignation all the good people that have been working there forever
Yep,
and who actually have experience and know what they're doing and are effective.
yep, yep, and then, all
This
their
is
all
what you
their
get. You get a bunch of crazy people who get as close to the White House as this poor
yep,
fellow did.
and, yeah, so he Trump tells them, "I want you 100% trying to go after my political enemies," and, forgetting about his actual enemies
The guys with
who are out
guns.
there who are out
Yeah,
there trying to shoot him. So it's like,
right,
maybe, hey, Donald, maybe get some FBI agents going after your actual threats against you instead of your political
right,
opponents, and then maybe you won't get shot.
right. Well, isn't that the reason for the extra billion for the wasn't that
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
security?
yeah, he just wants them. He doesn't wanna make a ballroom, he wants to make a bunker.
a bunker, a very fancy bunker. He didn't like
A
the
bu
bunker that he was put in
Yeah,
before. He's
yeah,
germaphobe. He
yeah,
doesn't like all that messy stuff.
yeah. Yeah, a bunker where everybody in the whole goddamn world knows exactly where it is. Yeah, real safe there, Donnie.
Mhm.
Yeah. Alright, anyway, the next thing I saw this thing, you're a big fan of MS Now, aren't you? MSNBC,
Yeah,
MS Now. I saw Ali Velshi talking about some ways that states are fighting, back against Citizens United, which is one of the arguably considered one of the most horrific, the Supreme Court decisions
decisions. Yeah,
ever, where basically
idiot.
corporations are same as people, and, it's not just Hawaii is the first one to put this into to law, but a lot of states are following up. So corporations, for those of you that are familiar with this, are actually formed in the states, and so the states now are starting to change what a corporation can do, what it is allowed to do politically, so they can't contribute to a political campaign. I don't
Well,
know if all 50 states will adopt this, but there's a way to fight back against the Citizens United. Uh,
nice.
so check out what the Hawaii is doing with regards to the laws of the corporations formed in their state. So they're fighting back. So people are fighting back. The kind of the never-ending battle here that goes on. And then for a minute, I wanted to talk about one of the guys I listen to. I listen to a lot of people, but this guy was saying that he had just gone on a trip to North Carolina, and he was shocked at how many people down there didn't really know what was going on with the war. This is a guy who gets
Really?
on TikTok and other podcasts and talk about what's going on with the war and stuff. And he went on this trip to North Carolina, and just your normal person on the street, right? A guy working construction or working in a restaurant or whatever. How few people actually knew what was happening, what
Like,
was
they
going on.
must have noticed the price of gas going up, but
They notice it goes up a bit. But they don't really know what the hell the Strait of Hormuz is and what Iran is and what's going on, and that we're having a war and Israel's involved, and just how few people were actually engaged with what the government was doing. And I don't know how, if you're listening to this, you're actually into podcasts and stuff, and you kind of know what's going on, whatever your opinion is about whether you agree with the war or not, but just how many people are just living their lives and they don't care.
they're
And
oblivious.
are they better off than us? I mean, I kind of think they're better off, and there's really going to be kind of a shock if kind of the negative projections come through, and like all of a sudden they're going to wake up and go, my gas is $8 a gallon. What the heck? And I
Why
gotta
is
wait. I
that?
gotta wait a half an hour to get a tank of gas.
Right.
And my bread is now $7 a loaf. What the heck is going on here? And it's like, well, have you been watching for the last 6 months? so
Right.
anyway, I just there seems to be a lot of people who just aren't engaged. Maybe I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing.
Well, and I'm probably will be shunned for this thought, but if you really don't know what's going on in the world, and maybe that's okay, for the most part, you live your life, you take care of your family, you've got enough on your plate, you don't want to take time to listen to a podcast or even watch the news or whatever. But should those people actually be given the ability to vote and determine who's going to lead our country if they literally don't have time to know what's going on? Maybe there should be some sort of well, they probably don't vote, would you say? They choose
Yeah.
not to vote. They self-select out of the process
Hmm.
if they really don't care enough to make a point to know what's going on.
Yeah, I don't know. I go back and forth on whether we should limit voting.
I mean,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
don't want people voting for somebody because they're taller and they look good or they
right.
sound good or they have
Yeah.
blonde hair and blue eyes. You want
Yeah.
them voting based on, you know, the boring details of their preferences and what they wanna do with the laws of the land and their policies and whatnot.
Yeah,
I
the
don't
the
know.
crit
Maybe
the
not everybody
criteria.
should be allowed to vote by age, based on age only.
Yeah, that's an argument. It's like anybody over 75 shouldn't be allowed to vote because the voting is for the future and their future, and I'm gonna be there. Not I'm gonna be there shortly myself. And, their future is short, and if why would they vote for themselves now when they're hurting someone who's 25 years old, so.
Well, I actually would disagree with that because it's historically the elders have always been, respected for their wisdom, right? So if you cut off the ability for informed, intelligent, engaged people to actually influence who's going to be in power, I think you might be missing out on a lot of, good sense and wisdom, conversely.
The counter argument would be, but stupid people get old too, so
Well,
just
again, my theory on stupid people, and I maybe people who choose not to engage or don't care, they should not be given the privilege to vote.
yeah,
Doesn't
right.
matter what age you are.
Well, and it could be weaponized because all the racist people in the South use the poll as a poll tax, but they would use a literacy test to keep black people from, and they have this incredibly difficult literacy test where you got to read Latin and shit like that to be able to
Yeah,
vote.
that's
So it
yeah,
can be
that's
weapon.
not
It can
what I
if
mean.
you. Yeah, if you say we got to
Right.
have a test here before you can vote, it's like, well, it can be weaponized against people who you don't want to vote. So
Well, yeah, I would like it to be used equally against people of all races and colors and
The
flavors,
Latin
and
test, yeah, you gotta pass the Latin test before you can vote there,
I think
no matter
just
what color
who's the
you are.
president of the United States, who's your governor, that kinda stuff.
Yeah, basic, how many representatives do you have, that kinda stuff, yep.
Yeah.
And, I don't know if I mentioned John Fetterman earlier, but
Yeah.
John Fetterman, who's being well, he's a Democrat, and Democrats are not very happy with him. His staff apparently is quitting like crazy. He's running through staff like nuts, and they all hate him for the kinds of the changes that what they thought
Right.
that he was and what he's doing now. He's
Right.
losing a lot of people working for him.
Mhm.
He's largely controlled by AIPAC, like a lot of other congressmen. But I don't know if this is if I'm being a jerk or not when I say this. But a lot of people are saying he recently had a stroke, or he had a stroke while he was getting elected, and a lot of people that know him are saying he's a different person now after the stroke. And, he's just losing a lot of staff because of how he's voting and the things he's saying. I don't know if it means anything. He's still gonna be the senator from Pennsylvania. I don't know if it's helping or hurting him in Pennsylvania, but, I don't know, he's bleeding staff. So,
Right? Okay. What else do we have?
let's go on to the business. I don't have the gas price. Honey, did you happen to notice the gas price at the corner here?
Give
Was
me a minute.
I'll go on to the next topic. We try to keep track of the price of gas at our local gas station. I think we missed it because of weekend festivities, but I'm gonna go on to Europe, and Europe is creating something called the 2030 Defense Initiative, where they're basically allocating a bunch of money for their own defense using their own defense contractors in Europe. They are looking at alternate payment systems to the SWIFT and PayPal. I don't know if SWIFT is a electronic payment system that a lot of countries and governments use, and it's U.S. based. So they're trying to get away from America. They're trying to have an alternate to PayPal. They're trying to get an alternate to the SWIFT here. France has now moved all its gold reserves back into France. They had gold in America, and it's back in France now. They're trying to look for alternatives to U.S. software companies, like
Wow.
Microsoft and stuff like that. So both the right and the left are kind of talking like this. We got to decouple ourselves from America. Canada is actively doing all kinds of contracts away from America. They're going with China. Canada just bought some airplanes from Saab, which is a Swedish Swedish company
Right.
against Boeing, so all these they're just slowly but surely, one thing here, one thing
Walking
there.
away.
We're gonna buy less planes from Boeing. We're gonna not use PayPal. We're not gonna use Visa or MasterCard anymore. We're gonna have our own credit card companies. Is slowly grinding through the
Well,
decoupling efforts from America. I'll let you guys decide if that's good or bad, but it's more of an actual thing.
okay.
Did we able to
All
find
right.
the price per gallon there at the BP?
Yeah. So on our corner, it's 488.
480. Oh my god.
I know.
Okay,
But down the road, though, half a mile, it's 530.
okay.
So I
I
can't
gotta
get
look
over the
into.
difference in price. That's crazy.
Yeah, usually they're not that big of a difference. I'm personally shocked. It's going down. Okay, so
I think
I'm
our
gonna have to rethink things.
broadcasting the gas price every week is having an impact. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm really kind of surprised. So I
All
don't know.
our
I gotta
thousands of listeners.
yes, like hey, our 17 listeners, yes, are affecting things.
That's right.
So
You didn't realize we had that much power, did you, honey?
I didn't realize it. I got to be honest. Yeah, but I know you and I drive around the Chicago area a lot. Once we cross over Peterson into the city, or cross over Devon into the city, and all of a sudden, it's
Mm,
530 versus 488 where we are. I'm
that's a
really
big
surprised.
difference. That's
I'm
crazy.
surprised it's actually going down. So maybe the individual vendor there is just thinking, I'll just lower the price there to try to get people to come here, and they'll buy something else when they come here. And I don't know.
Mhm.
So
All right.
so that's it for the business report. I got a couple of sports things, which I try to only do sports stuff when it's kind of national or something. So, for those of you that follow football, the quarterback for the New York Giants, a guy named Jackson Dart, who was a rookie last year, and the Bears beat him. Thank you. He actually introduced Trump at a rally in New York a few days ago, and one of his teammates, a fellow named Abdul Carter, who was also drafted in the first round, came out on Twitter and said, WTF, is this AI? And Abdul Carter is a Muslim and not a fan of the president. And so now the debate is, if is does Jackson Dart separate the locker room because he comes out for Trump, or is Abdul Carter separated in the locker room because he's fired back at Jackson Dart saying, "Hey, asshole, 60% of your locker room is black, and he's a racist, and why did you do this?" So the locker room has got all kinds of problems now, and who's the problem? Is it Jackson Dart for saying he supports the president, or is it Abdul Carter for coming out and saying, dude, what the
Well,
fuck, man?
just like any of us in our own jobs, maybe nobody talks politics.
One thing I like about sports is that theoretically, you're there and a goal to win games, and what your politics is shouldn't matter. Like, I'm a huge fan of the Chicago Cubs, and one of the guys on the team is a big fan of Charlie Kirk. Is a guy named Matt Shaw, who's kind of a utility
Racist.
player. He actually knew Charlie Kirk from living in Phoenix when he was in the minor leagues, and he actually took a day off during the playoff run last year to go to Charlie Kirk's funeral. But, so if this guy's on the team I like, and if he's playing well, should I care about that? Even though I didn't really like Charlie Kirk.
Going to a
So,
funeral is a little different to
yeah, I understand if it's
standing
your
up and
father, if it's your father or
endorsing.
your well, it's your father or your brother, I get it, but if it's just a guy you knew who's a friend and you're a
Yeah.
professional getting paid a hell of a lot of money to be on a team during a critical playoff run, I don't
Mm,
know. Jackson Dart is
right.
the star quarterback. I don't know if he's a star, but he's the quarterback of the New York Giants, which is one of the
Mhm.
founding teams. They've won the Super Bowl twice. One of the iconic franchises. You've got a locker room that's 65% black, and you go and support a guy who is a clear racist. You're supposed to be the leader of the whole team, and then you do this.
Yeah.
So, on the other hand, should
That
Abdul
would be poor
Carter
judgment, I'd say.
right, so on the other hand, should Abdul Carter have just kept it personal, kept it inside the locker room and said, "Hey, dude, Trump's a fucking dick. Stop this. You're breaking up the locker room." I'm trying to figure out. It's kinda like families. Families are kinda the same way maybe, or your work, where you work.
Well, okay, let's seriously look at that then, because if this fellow is really, is he, just say he's like, he's a captain, he's a leader of the team?
He's a quarterback, so he becomes the leader of the
All
team by
right.
default, yes. Mhm.
So that's really dumb on his part, because keeping the team together as a unit is part of your job. So by rights, he should be fired. At
Well,
least,
he's not gonna be fired.
well, he won't be fired, but he will not be any longer someone who is
The
the,
fan base, you're in New York, you're in New York City, which is as blue as they come.
like, he just needs to keep his mouth shut. And there are consequences. There should be consequences. All right. Well, that's all we have for today. Please follow, subscribe, or share. So thanks, everybody. Goodbye.